Let's try some new Lattafas today, shall we? They're called Dynasty and Habik. Hey guys, I'm George and I'm back with some more first impressions, this time on two new Lattafa releases that are called Dynasty and Habik. They were pretty recent releases from Lattafa, and today I'm going to share with you my very initial impressions about both fragrances. I've been wearing them side by side for 2 days now, and today I'm going to share with you what I think about them. And I'm going to start with this one, which is called Habik. Now, not going to bother too much with presentation and stuff like that. The bottle is like this dark gray or silver color with some purple accents, dark purple accents. Now this is called Habik for men because there's also a Habik for woman fragrance as well, which I don't own and I don't plan on getting. The bottle design is very similar between both of them, but this men's fragrance, actually the masculine one, comes in this purplish color with some interesting sort of an ornaments on the bottle itself. Now, whether you think the bottle is beautiful or not, it's up to you. I personally am not a huge fan. I think it looks kind of Middle Eastern, but what can you do? The cap though is quite heavy. It's plastic but has metallic coating, and it's a pretty snug fit, and you can pick up the bottle through the cap. The whole bottle has a nice heft. Also, the atomizer is quite good, as you can see. Now, Habik is a clone fragrance, and the fragrance that it's cloning is an interesting original release from the brand of Jean-Paul Gaultier, which is called Le Mot Essence de Parfum. And sadly, that very nice original fragrance got discontinued a few years ago, and nowadays is very hard to find, and it's also very expensive if you're looking for a full unsealed bottle. Prices can reach over $300–400 on eBay, so it's crazy high. But we already have a nice clone which comes from the brand of Fragrance World, and it's called Porsche Omega. And now we have a second clone, this time around from the brand of Lattafa, that's called Habik. But this is an interesting creation from Lattafa because, you know, when I saw this one popping up, when I saw information about this fragrance a few weeks ago, and I saw that it's supposedly a clone of Essence de Parfum, I was really looking forward to trying this one. And when I received it yesterday and I tried it immediately on skin, initially I felt a little bit disappointed because this really felt very spicy in the opening. Now the original fragrance also has some spiciness. It has some a cardamom note, which is a sort of a signature you know, note in the whole Le Mot line of fragrances. But this one has a lot of cardamom, it has quite a bit of cinnamon, but it also has a lot of pepperness to it, which adds this really spicy kick in the beginning that feels a lot spicier and a lot warmer than the original fragrance feels. There is a bit of freshness, a bit of greenness with this one in the opening, but basically the opening is mainly all about that spiciness, the cardamom, and especially that pepper note, black pepper note that this one has. And that kind of disappointed me because this felt really sort of sharp and overly spicy, especially compared to the original fragrance. Now, the more time passes, the more this actually gets closer to the original one, because you start to get in some of the lavender which is present in the original fragrance. You get a bit of the sweetness, a bit of the vanillic sweetness, maybe a hint of tonka bean, some musk as well. But even on the dry down, this doesn't feel super close to the original fragrance, because in the opening this feels a lot more spicy than the original fragrance, and then on the dry down this feels less sweet than the original fragrance, although the dry down feels a lot closer to the original one than the opening does. But still, the dry down is still not super close, because it just lacks the vanillic sweetness that the original fragrance has. This also has a hint of a leather note, which I don't think is listed in the note breakdown, but that leather note is also present in the original one as well. And overall, this is an interesting take that initially I felt a little bit disappointed by, but actually if you give it some time to settle on your skin, this will get closer to Essence de Parfum. It's not a straight up clone, it's not a one-to-one clone, and in fact Porsche Omega from Fragrance World actually feels a lot closer, a lot more true to the original one. Whether Lattafa did this intentionally or not, my guess is that they did it intentionally, but they tried to do a spin or like a twist on the original scent. adding it more spiciness, more warmth in the opening, and dialing back some of the sweetness on the dry down. Still though, if you are familiar with the original fragrance, you'll immediately recognize what Habik has been inspired by. And overall, I can say that I like it. But I thought that I'm going to like it more. Now I'm going to give it some time, of course, just like with any other fragrance, and I hope with a bit of time that a bit of that sharpness, a bit of that pepperiness in the opening will go away, and also as this matures, more sweetness will start to come up in its dry down, thus making it closer to the original fragrance. But I like it even like this. Still though, I had a slightly higher expectations. When we talk about performance, keep in mind again that this is the second day that I've been owning both fragrances, and this so far seems to be doing around about 7 hours of performance with decent projection in the first about I would say hour and a half. Personally, I paid around about 28 euros for this one, so that will make it something like $32. And now let's move on to the other one that I'm going to cover in today's video, which is called Dynasty. Again, a pretty recent release from Lattafa. This one has this sort of a dark red colored box with some silver accents on it. Forgot to mention this about the other fragrance, but both of them come in a 100 ml bottle size and EDP concentration. And then this is the way that the bottle looks. Now, I kind of dig the way that this bottle looks, and initially when I first saw pictures of this one popping up online, I thought that this might end up being some sort of an Dior Homme clone, like Dior Homme 2020 or something like that, because the way that, especially without a cap, this bottle kind of reminds me of the way that Dior bottles look. But actually it doesn't smell like Dior Homme 2020 or anything like that. So I got a bit misled by the look of the bottle. The atomizer again is pretty good, although the one on Habik is actually better. Again, let's use a few sprays so I can talk about the scent of this one. This is an interesting scent actually that I'm not sure if it's a clone of anything, if it's cloning something. I've never tried it, so it doesn't really strongly remind me of anything out there. Although I get slight hints of a few other fragrances. For example, especially the opening kind of vaguely reminds me of something like Louis Vuitton's Imagination, but this is definitely not an Imagination clone. But because of the strong tea note that this one has, the strong sort of green and tea note that this one has, kind of reminds me of that. It also reminds me of a clone of Imagination that comes from the brand of French Avenue, which is called Essence de Blanc, which is like a more floral take on Imagination itself. But again, this is not an Imagination clone. It's just the way that the tea note, the ginger that this one has, a bit of the freshness in the opening, the slight greenness that this has, comes across a little bit sort of reminding me of Imagination. But the more this develops, the more different it gets to Imagination itself. It's fresh, it's gingery, feels a little bit green, there's a touch of fruity sweetness with this one, there's that strong tea note. There's a bit of sweet, especially that you can feel this one on the dry down, and the dry down becomes quite woody. I think there's a cedar wood note with this one. There's a bit of amber sweetness as well, although it doesn't feel very sweet. It's not a sweet fragrance by any means, but definitely on the dry down you'll get a bit of a sweet vibe out of it. And it's a very interesting, slightly green, slightly floral, herbal type of scent that feels very mature, that feels very sophisticated, feels a little bit dressed up, definitely feels quite mature in my opinion. The opening, especially in the first few seconds, can feel a tiny bit synthetic because of that citrusy freshness, which feels synthetic in a lot of fragrances, but that goes away after a few seconds. But overall, this actually has been surprisingly good for me personally. I ended up being surprised by how much I like this one, especially on its dry down. Again, a nice, mature, I would say unisex fragrance that leans to the masculine side, that feels very sophisticated, feels a little bit dressed up, and definitely something that you can wear, throughout, you can daily wear throughout the warm months of the year. Performance-wise, again, just like the other one, I get about 7. This one may be feeling a little bit better, performing like 7.5 hours on my first wearing. This also projects a little bit better than Habik, at least from my initial experience. So overall, you know, it's a decently performing scent. Price wise, I personally got it off Nutinus website, and I paid, again, just like the other one, roughly around about 27, 28 euros. So you're looking at around about a $30 price tag. Overall, it was an interesting and I would say even a pleasant surprise for me personally how much I like this one. Again, I'm going to give it some time just to see how it will evolve in the next upcoming few weeks and whether I'm going to change my opinion on it. But so far, I've been really digging Dynasty. Again, Habik is a nice fragrance on its own. It's just not as close to Le Male Essence de Parfum as I expected it to be, but still it feels like an interesting alternative. Overall, both fragrances I ended up liking quite a lot, but Dynasty for me is the one that stood out. So guys, in today's video I shared with you my very initial impressions about the two new fragrances from the brand of Lattafa that are called Dynasty and Habik. I hope that you found today's video interesting. If you did, give it a like. And I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one for your dose of some fragrance content. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.